Hi there, this is Nutwood Products and I'm Nick Stevens. On this channel we try to put the fun back into DIY whilst perhaps teaching you some skills that you don't know. I'm not an expert by any means at anything, so I'm just trying to be as inspirational as I can while sharing some of the things that I've been doing, particularly during the lockdown period. For those of you who've been to my channel before, welcome back, and for anyone who's new here, I hope you find something interesting in the content. Let me know in the comments down below if you do, or even if you don't. I read them all and it's useful information for me to adjust the way I do things. My goal really is to make this your channel, so if you've got anything in particular you want to see, or you have any questions about any of the things I do, feel free to ask me. This video is about me putting together a planter box at the base of my shed, which was designed as a way to showcase some of the sunflowers that I've been growing. It was the wife's idea to have somewhere to put those things so that she could show them off to people when she eventually gets the chance to invite people around, which obviously during the lockdown period hasn't happened a lot. So this is the planter at the start. You can probably tell it's made from an old scaffold plank, which I cut into 3 lengths, 2 roughly 9-inch lengths, and I think the longer length is about 7.5 feet. I attached 2 blocks of wood at either end on the side panels in order to be able to screw it to the shed. Now, apart from the connecting frame of the shed, it's basically a layer of shiplap thick all round, which meant it made the most sense for me to drill holes from the outside to give me a guide to be able to screw into those blocks from inside the shed. Of course, this planter's going to need a lining. For that I used some thick polythene that I had laying about in the shed, so it didn't cost me anything. And essentially, because this is going to be filled in with soil, the only real prerequisite for it is for it to be more or less watertight. So I made some interesting folds and folded everything over the top and stapled it down. But basically I wasn't going for artistic here, I was just going for functionality. So you can see it does the job. It's basically got to hold soil, so the idea is to stop the soil from getting washed all around the place. I had to make some holes in the bottom of that before I actually filled it in with soil, but the next job was to paint the wood. I chose to paint it the same colour as the decking. There's method in my madness because I'm a sloppy painter, and if I spill it, it's not really going to show. Once again, my skills with the paintbrush are extremely quick. My hand becomes a blur as I apply the coating to the wood. What can I say? It's my superpower. I'd just like to give a recommendation to BB, a fellow YouTuber who has eczema, dermatitis and a variety of allergies, who's just started vlogging about her experiences with that and the sorts of things that she's tried that work for her, and some of the diet changes she's made to improve things, the medication she uses, the way that it affects her mental health. If you do get a chance, check out her channel, it's extremely interesting, she's very eloquent, and there should be a link on the screen up here. Right, that's enough about painting. Nice grain on that wood though, look at that, I say. There's some very interesting features and... oh hang on, I've been distracted again. So these are the pieces of wood I was planning to use for the edge trim along the top of the planter box. So I set the blade height to slightly more than the thickness of each piece of wood and used that same thickness to space my rip fence from the blade. Then it was just as simple as ripping each board into 3 lengths, and they're slightly wider than 3 times the thickness, so there's an offcut at the end. And these are the pieces I ended up with. I think I might have gone a bit overboard because the planter's not actually that big. It'd have to be about 20 foot long. I decided to join the trims with half lap joints, and in order to do this I needed to find the halfway mark for the thickness of each piece of wood. So, tip of the day. What you see me doing here is using 2 specific marks on the ruler. In this instance I'm using 7 and 13, and placing those on a random diagonal across the piece of wood. It doesn't matter what the angle is, because the midpoint between those 2 will always be the middle of that piece of wood. So I marked that, then used a speed square to mark a line for the level of my cut. Then I offered the piece of wood up to the table saw and raised my blade up until the highest tooth just grazes that line. If you go too mad here you can get it wrong. I introduced the rip fence and sandwiched the thickness of the piece of wood between that and the blade. Now that might seem intuitive, but in actual fact it's a mistake. The cut I make now at the furthest point along the piece of wood is going to be longer by the width of the blade. On a project like this it doesn't matter too much, but if you're making furniture it's not a mistake you want to make. You should allow for the full curve of the blade. Once that initial cut is made, it's just a matter of keeping your piece of wood tight against your miter gauge while it's in the slot, and then edging the board across by roughly half the thickness of the blade each time, and then making regular passes straight across the top of the blade. You could use a router to do this, but table saws are much better at hogging out lots of material without being stressed. It's a shame they don't let us use dado blades in this country. All this work makes for a pretty tidy result on a lap joint, and the bottoms are usually quite flat, but you can sand them if they've got any ridge marks in them from the blade. Takes a while, but then it's just a matter of rinse and repeat for the next 2,000 or so. Anyway, a coat of yellow paint later and this is what they look like. So I laid the pieces on for a dry fit, and this was as much to get positioning right as anything. The idea then is to move them one at a time and secure them with screws. Of course, being careful to hold on to them so they don't move around once you move the next one along. You can't see me doing it in these clips, but I pre-drilled all these holes in order to stop the ends of the wood from splitting. The last thing you want is to have milled all them out and then have them split on you. And while I'm editing this down now, it's the first time I've noticed how much sawdust there was in my hair. You'd think I'd have brushed it out at least. What an idiot. And this is the end result.
few drainage holes later, and I'm ready to start putting a gravel base in this thing. Now the reason for that is drainage at the bottom, but it also stabilises the soil around the holes in the bottom of the plastic in the same way that that works in the bottom of a flower pot. From there on out, it was just a matter of filling the thing with soil. Easy part. Tip the bags in, smooth it out, job done. I'm using a multi-purpose compost here that I got from a local garden centre. Like I said, I'm not really a gardener. I'm not a builder, I'm not a maker, I'm not entirely sure what I am. But the plants I put in here have basically got two chances. It's dirt, that's what they need, it's in. Then of course, finally it's time for the pièce de résistance. Putting the actual flowers in, making it look pretty. Hoping some time in this trough will give them a revival. So for the proper horticulturalist among you, if you want to know what these flowers are that I'm putting in, that one at the far end there is a purple one, and then there's some pink ones and a white one. I'm probably going to get all sorts of comments about the fact that I'm doing this wrong in some way, but like I said, I'm not a gardener and these guys have got two chances. In any event, like I said earlier, I welcome the comments, whether they're positive or negative. You never know, I might learn something in the process. So the whole thing looks pretty enough. I'll add to it as I go along.
If you've taken anything away from the content in this video, I'd appreciate a comment. If you feel that it's something you'd like to see more of, then feel free to like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in future videos. But just remember, it's not necessarily perfection we're striving for. Sometimes it's just the fact that you made it yourself.